What's up, guys? This week's video is about being proactive. I've been reading this really cool book about 7 habits of highly effective people. It's quite famous and well known in the personal development world. And basically I want to explore this book with you, summarizing every chapter and every habit so that I can share what I learn and get a deeper understanding. Because as we know, the best way to fully grasp something is to teach it to others. So that's what I'm doing here with you. So I recently just started reading it and it's really captivating. It's really well written, and the first habit has already gotten me quite addicted to this book. The first habit is about being proactive. What does this mean? Well, we can think about it in a few different ways, but the main distinction that the author makes is that the opposite of being proactive is being reactive. So what we want to try and minimize is this way of being reactive and focus more on being proactive and taking control of our lives. When we're reactive to things, we are letting other things control us. Like the model that the author uses in the book is that whenever we receive stimulus, we have this moment. What I've seen on the internet and like to use is the 3-second rule. It can be a stimulus from just a thought, somebody else giving you some attention and asking something from you, or something coming into your perceived reality and wanting to distract you. You have a few milliseconds to 3 seconds to choose how you react to that. And by being more conscious about how you react, you become proactive in making those decisions. To also look at the 3-second rule in a different way, the author doesn't mention this, but the 3-second rule is one where you want to make a decision that is fast enough in the first 3 seconds of where you have an action that you want to perform. And you should do it within 3 seconds, because otherwise your excuses will accumulate and you might just not do it. Say, the thought of, ooh, I want to make lunch. If you want to focus on being proactive, then when the thought enters your mind, you can't let excuses accumulate, because then you might think, I'm a bit too lazy to make lunch or dinner. What can I cook? And basically, you're sabotaging yourself from what you wanted to do initially, even though you justify it with these cognitive biases. Ultimately, you know that making yourself dinner or lunch will make you more satisfied, because you accomplished a task that required a little bit of effort but was meaningful for you than not doing it. Back to the stimulus response example that the author gives. You can look at operant conditioning, which is a type of conditioning that was well portrayed in Pavlov's dogs examples, where, if you don't know, this example is when Pavlov was a researcher who created an association between ringing a bell and giving a dog food. Every time his dog was about to have food, he would first ring a bell and then give a dog food. In the beginning, the bell doesn't mean anything to the dog. It's just a noise and there's no connotation behind it. It's maybe just a bit annoying. But then over time, as the dog would hear the bell over and over and then get the food right after, this association would be created, meaning that the dog knew that every time he heard the bell, food would come. And what the researcher noticed, Pavlov, is that the dog would start salivating when he would start ringing the bell, even if there was no food present or near. So just creating that association in our mind from a stimulus has some already predetermined responses in us. And by being aware of when certain stimuli might have on us, you can start to realize that maybe, oh, you don't want to be reacting in this way when X stimulus happens. For example, a common one is your alarm clock in the morning. Maybe the stimulus would be an alarm clock, and if you want to wake up early, but the reaction that you've been having to your alarm clock for years now is that you snooze it, then even if you make the decision the night before, at the beginning it will be very difficult. to change this response of snoozing rather than getting up. Of course, the first night you might be very motivated to do it, but the consistency behind always following through with getting up and not snoozing is the habit that we want to create. And being proactive to make this decision. Between stimulus and response, man has the freedom to choose. Between stimulus and response, there's self-awareness, imagination, conscience, and independent will, which the author all mentions. And by being aware of these four and being able to use them to your advantage, you can become more proactive. Another way to look at this is that you want to start acting for being proactive rather than being acted upon. Many times in life, when you don't make plans and structure to your path forward, others might throw suggestions for you, and this could put you on paths that you might not want to be. But you would follow them because you don't have a path and you want to be doing something with your life, even if it's not aligned with your values. And it's okay to follow suggestions from other people about what they think you should be doing, but ultimately there are certain things that you love doing more, and everybody doesn't know that. But if you don't have an outline of how you want to go towards your vision of your future self, then whatever suggestions of behavior or actions or paths that others throw to you, this might throw you off. And you might take these opportunities, which is okay, but if you are not thinking in the long term, then they might hinder you as well. And there might also be plans with like having lunch with friends. This is okay, this is great, socializing is awesome, but you can't complain that you don't have enough time for work then, because you didn't prioritize your own life. You can't complain if you don't regularly plan to block off time to work on yourself, because otherwise, if you don't block off certain hours in your calendar, physically blocking it off, either in your paper calendar or your electronic one, then others will do it for you. Another point that the author makes about proactivity is that you should check your language. A reactive person might say, I can't do this because I don't feel like it. Versus a proactive way of thinking is more, I choose to do this, which puts you in power of making your own choices. An example would be, I can't go to the gym today because I have too much work. But if you reframe that, you could say, I choose to do work because this is what I'm passionate about. And then that would make you think, are you actually passionate about the work, or do you want to work on your health more? And that might make you realize that you want to go to the gym actually, or that you want to focus on work. A reactive person might say, that's just the way I am, versus, and that's a very fixed mindset, versus a proactive person who might say, I can choose a different approach from what I'm currently doing, because this doesn't seem to be working for me and I feel stuck, so I can choose. And that makes you proactive. The final element that the author mentions in the first habit of 7 habits of highly effective people is the circle of concern. He talks a lot about knowing what we have control of in this circle versus what we don't have control of. And making this distinction of what you have control of, you have influence of, and you can grow this circle of influence by constantly working on it and thus finding more opportunities that you can have influence and grow where you have mastery. And everything that's outside of this circle of influence is a circle of concern. And if you're focusing on the circle of concern, there isn't really a point, because all you're doing is occupying your mind space with thoughts that are harming you or are slowing you down. For example, politics in a country that you see on television. There are a couple ways of thinking about this. Say about American elections, for example. might be a concern of yours because it's a big country that has power in the world and you're concerned about the future of the world. But then you got to think, if that's the only thought in your mind that's worrying you, what action are you actually taking? By looking at your circle of influence, you can think to yourself, how can I express my thoughts about this topic and help other people understand what's important about shaping an economy like that, or the future of a country like that. So I'm not saying to give up everything that you're concerned about, because what we're concerned about, we also want to work towards becoming part of our circle of influence. But worrying without action is ultimately the killer of dreams. By focusing on what you have control over, of what you have influence over, this leads to personal power and productivity. I hope you enjoyed this video, everybody. I want to make a video for each of the habits, so there will be 7 videos in this series. And tell me what you think. Was it interesting? Does it give you some food for thought? I hope you go out there and be proactive. And let's make a change in this. See you soon. Bye.